I feel like I've heard of you. I feel like I've heard of you. And how about you, sir?
Fresno, California.
Fresno. All right, I love Fresno. Tow company, too. All right, and this is our affiliate, Dan Downey.
Sacramento.
He's from Sacramento. He actually owns Sacramento Mobile EV Rescue. Right? And I'll tell you a little bit about that. All right, we're going to get started. So my name is Ron Siljeski. My company is EV Road Hero. We make the mobile EV chargers. Just first by a show of hands, how many of you tow stranded EVs now? Okay, about half. That's what I'm seeing. All right. Okay, so when I talk to people in the booth, that's about half that tow stranded EVs, half that don't. Interestingly enough, last year, about 25% towed stranded EVs, and 3/4 did. So, real interesting to see that going. So, here's what we're going to do today. All right, this is what we're going to go over. We're going to talk about applications and some of the terminology, because if I don't give you this background, you're not going to understand the rest of it, okay? So I want to make you versant in understanding kilowatts, kilowatt hours, and all the different equipment and things out there, enough to understand the business, because we're all here because we want to make money, right? That's what we want to do. We want to make money. We'll talk about some of the equipment and the process. Then we're going to dive into the business side. I also want you to just have your awareness up of any of the watch-outs out there, okay? So just to be aware of what's out there and what's real and what's not. Okay, so applications. So think of rescue charging and convenience charging, okay? And I love that term, convenience charging. I actually coined it because I had a few tow people or entrepreneurs who said, hey, I want to use your charger, and I want to go to a festival near me and give people charges and get them from 20% to 80%. All right? Well, so there's rescue charging. That's what we'll talk about today. That's where the money is, I believe, the money to be made, and that's what tow people can provide. All right? And that's when they're out of battery, they're on the side of the road, they're a stranded EV, and you want to give them 5 or 10 rescue miles, like bring them a half a gallon of gas. Right? Typically in under 30 minutes, it requires some lower power, lower cost equipment. And I put that in quotes because it's all relative. Right? But you'll see, now convenience charging is actually not an acronym. Charging as a service, CAS. Right? So more than 5 to 10 miles. So, people picture, and they have people who do this business model. People don't want to go sit at a Tesla charger, so they want to bring a truck and get it from 20% to 80%, okay? You need different types of equipment to do this, and I like to think of a rescue charger, that's like using a squirt gun to fill a bathtub. And you need to pay for a squirt gun. Convenience charging, you need a garden hose to fill that bathtub, all right? So imagine trying to use a squirt gun to fill a bathtub. That's why it's impractical to use rescue charging equipment to do convenience charging. All right? So let's just go over here just a little bit so you understand this. So kilowatt and kilowatt hours. Kilowatts, 1,000 watts, 1.3 horsepower. It's power. All right? It's power. You can think of power also as speed. How fast am I delivering power? How fast am I filling that bathtub? How fast am I filling that gas tank? How fast am I filling that battery? All right, the battery of the car. And you can see the flow and pressures, voltage. This is the geeky engineer in me. And when I first gave this seminar, I spent way too much time on all the front end of the fuel tank. So if you give like our unit that's 9 kilowatts for 1 hour, you're providing 9 kilowatt hours. It's like the volume of energy, all right? And then you think like a Chevy Leaf, some of the batteries are 50 kilowatt hours, right? So let's say it's 10 kilowatt hours, like the rescue charger for 1 hour, we'd have to sit there for 5 hours to fill it up, right? Okay. So it's important to understand kilowatts is speed, kilowatt hours is capacity. You don't need to understand it any deeper than that. It's just to be aware of it. All right, so kilowatts, kilowatt hours, and then, so, you know, a gasoline car gets 25 miles per gallon. An average EV gets 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. All right, and is it a big Tesla Cybertruck or Rivian, or is it a little Chevy Volt? It's the same thing, analogous to the gasoline world. It's going to vary based on that, okay? It also varies on terrain and weather. You know, EVs are much more susceptible to weather variance in their range than gasoline cars. Why? Because now you're using power to run heat or air conditioning. Or, you know, when the Tesla says you've got 100 miles to go, it's probably estimating that being flat with no wind going at 50 miles an hour. You know, I had a friend who told me, oh, I had 100 miles to get to the charger, and I was doing 75, and it said, slow down, or else you're not going to make it to the charger. Oops. All right, so a level 2, you know, and that's what we sell, a level 2 charger. It's about 20 minutes for 5 to 10 miles. So you'll just get used to that refrain. About 20 minutes for 5 to 10 rescue miles. And then they have level 3 high-speed DC chargers. And that's for if you want to do convenience charging. Or hey, if you want to do rescue charging with the convenience charging, by all means. But open your pocketbook and get ready to have some big equipment. Okay? So there are the considerations. Power, speed, how fast you can charge. Capacity, right? How much the battery might have, and I'll just talk more about that. And then the range, you know, a few thousand. Our unit is $5,500. We're on the lower end. You can spend over $100,000 on a big convenience charger. Right? And then portability, that's important too. How easy is it to move around? How big is it? How much effort do I have to put to get this thing around? All right, here's the slide I said I geeked out on when I first did this the first time. There's a couple. This is all the math behind it. 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. You know, efficiency, the time, all that stuff. It's all science. But basically, here's the bottom line. If you have a 9 kilowatt unit, it takes about 11 to 12 minutes for 5 miles, right? 5 miles. And that's why we say 20 minutes for 5 to 10 rescue miles, all right? What I also say is be careful with claims that say up to 1 mile per minute, because that's misleading in my mind. And what I say to my customers and anybody who I can help educate, I don't want you calling me back a couple months after you use the unit. You say, hey man, I'm not getting one mile per minute. And I have to say, oh, it was up to. That's what I meant, up to. Right? So, these EVs are so affected by weather, and like if there's a dead EV, it's going to start charging very slowly, protecting itself. And even though you've got a squirt gun to fill it, it's only taking a drill because it's protecting itself. And then the battery conditions itself, because the EV is the master, right? The EV is the master in the speed that's being pulled. The charger tells it, I can deliver you up to 9 kilowatts. And the EV takes up to that based on how ready it is, okay? So, again, don't be misled. Up to 1 mile a minute doesn't mean you're going to get 1 mile a minute. And I want to be honest with you. 20 minutes for 5 to 10 rescue miles. Capacity is not a big deal if you have a rescue charger. If you buy a convenience charger, a lot of them. Has anybody heard of spark charge in here? All right, just 1 or 2 hands. This guy, brilliant guy, he was on Shark Tank, and he developed a mobile rescue unit. Right, they're right here. And each one of these is like 2 kilowatt hours. Right, that's the size of it. It's a big battery. So it's one battery that you as a tow operator would use to go and charge the car battery. It's great. But you know, you're not spending $5,500. Like you're gonna spend 20 grand to get into that, right? They may have one for 15, but it's very small. And then the difference is if you have a level 2 charger like ours, it's gasoline. So how long does it run? You got another 5-gallon can of gas, it'll just keep going. It'll just keep going and going and going and going. All right. So like our unit, for instance, it's got a 6-gallon tank. You can get 5 to 10 rescue charges out of one full tank. And the nearest gas station is right around the corner. So just be aware, a lot of the battery ones, the Mobile 3 ones, you have to go and recharge it after you exhaust the battery capacity to the stranded EV. Right? Not bad, just something to be aware of. And these are much faster too. Okay? All right, so that's about capacity. Let's talk about cost. I already told you about our cost. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. So can you make one of these? You absolutely can. You absolutely can make one. But what you need to be aware of is you can't go buy a Harbor Freight generator because it's dirty. And EVs are computers and they want clean power. So like our power source is an inverter. It's got a THD, total harmonic distortion, less than 3%. So it's crystal clean power that EVs love. So that's the first thing. If you're going to try to DIY one of these, you got to have clean power. And the second one is you got to make sure you tune your EV charger. Right? You plug in your EV charger to your 240 in your inverter. You got to make sure that your EV charger doesn't pull more capacity than your inverter can give. All right? And that's what we do. We do all the engineering, and we've engineered the charger to the inverter so one doesn't exceed the other, right? If it pulls too much, you're going to damage the inverter. If it pulls too little, you're wasting time. Right? So we've done that math and that for you. So that's what I was saying with these. Typically, and I saw there's a guy here who sells an EV charger that's a battery. It's like 20 kilowatts, that's the speed. 20 kilowatt hours, that's the capacity. And remember, if you've got a Tesla that's 60 kilowatt hour battery, 20 kilowatt hours can fill 1/3 of that before you need to fill your battery. But my point was, he's got 20 kilowatts, 20 kilowatt hours, it's $25,000. So more than a squirt gun, not a hose, maybe like one of those super soakers, so it can go a little bit faster, but you're going to pay for that. All right, we've got plenty of time. Okay, so portability. So when we talk, when we sell our unit, we talk about power, price, and portability. Okay? And to me, that's the holy trinity of the equipment in this area. Portability is key. So those big DC units, they can be several hundred pounds. Right? They're not easy to move around. Or I've seen somebody get I was at a tow show in Florida. I was at one other tow show. There's this really nice 360 kilowatt truck that's got a diesel generator, propane generator, and it's an amazing fast fire hose of a charger. $390,000. Right? So just getting back to the economics a little bit about it. If anybody here is thinking about doing convenience charging, I think it's a hard business to be in, because the most you're going to charge is maybe double that somebody doesn't want to go sit at a Tesla charger for a half an hour, right? So instead of them paying $50, maybe they'll pay $100, maybe, right, to save a half an hour. And you've got $30, $40, $300,000 to pay off. Hard to pay that off in $30 at a time, okay? Now, conversely, these, we have $5,500, and we'll talk more about the process, but it's a lot lower in the price. But more back to this slide, portability. You make one. This is an inverter. It's got wheels. It weighs 200 pounds. And I have a little SUV. I have some ramps that I bought from Harbor Freight. I put the seat down in the back of the SUV. I put 2 of these in the back. I got a tow hitch with a cargo carrier, for wheelchairs and things, and I put a third one on the back. So we actually have some people, we'll talk more about the process. You don't want to send your Jordan out there and put this up on there. Light-duty trucks. And even on the back of a hitch, I've got some entrepreneurs who are doing this on the back of a hitch with their carrier, who are making some good money now doing rescue charges. So just important to know. And also, Zips has a unit, and if you go to the Zips booth, our booth is 818. Zips is right behind us. Go to the Zips unit. They've got a Rev unit. That's our competitor, and it pulls out. Okay, and go see that unit, because you should be aware of everything in this space. We like to think that we've got the Goldilocks solution, and I'll tell you why. Because we were at a tow show in Florida last year, and we made a smaller one. Hey, people want to save money, right? So at $5,500, we could sell this for $3,500. Oh yeah, but it's slower. Now instead of spending 20 minutes, now you're going to spend 45 minutes. All right, and so the market told us, I'd rather pay the $5,500 than have something slower that wastes my time. All right, and then we made something bigger. But as soon as you get bigger, now it's not 200 pounds anymore. Now it's 350 pounds. And now instead of 5,500, it's $7,000 or $8,000 or $9,000. And does it save you time? Yes. But if you remember my slide over here, right? So instead of spending 11 to 12 minutes for 5 miles, you're going to save a minute or two. So, is the extra 100 pounds, is the extra $1,500 worth that? The market's told us no. And that's why we only have one unit. I call it the Goldilocks unit, the sweet spot. Right? Perfect balance of price, power, and portability. Okay, so here's the summary. And, this is what you can see what I've been explaining. Here's the estimated time to add 5 miles of range. Double that for the 10 miles. But so again, what I say is, in about 20 minutes with our unit, you'll give them 5 to 10 rescue miles. Okay? And then going all the way up, you can start to see about the charging and the prices and how expensive it can all get. Okay, now here's the fun part. We got a half an hour left. The process. So, are you towing or charging? So usually, let's just start with how this works. If you're a tow operator, how many of you say you get calls now? By a show of hands, who rescues stranded EVs today? Okay. Well, let me ask you, how many do you get per month, would you say?
About 3.
3 per month? Anybody get more than 3 per month? You do. 4 or 5. How many do you get?
10, 15.
10, 15 per month. You're rescuing 10 or 15 EVs per month. So you're putting them all on a flatbed. Okay. And how far are you generally taking them?
10, 20 miles. We're the South Portland, so we get a lot of that Portland.
Okay. So here's what I suggest and I hear in the processes. And you get a call, hopefully it's an organic cash call. And if you're not getting them organic, are you getting them organic or through a roadside?
Both.
Okay. Well, this man over here, and we'll talk more about that, he's started up something called EEE Rescue. Right? So there's AAA, he's Triple E. He's a master at marketing. He can help get organic calls. We sell equipment, we educate. He runs Sacramento mobile EV charging. He also is building a nationwide network to get organic cash calls flowing in certain cities that he's starting up. Right? So obviously cash calls are better. So you get the call. Here's what I would suggest. You get the call. Hi, this is John. I'm stuck on the side of the road with my Tesla battery is dead. Okay. Well, first I would say, well, what kind of car is it? It's a Tesla. Okay. And how far do you got to go? I got to go, 63 miles to my house. I say, John, that's going to cost you in time and money. How far is the nearest charger? 6 miles away. Okay. Right? So that's what we'll plan to do. And then John might say, well, how much is it? So what I like to do is opportunity pricing, right? And if somebody's got a little Chevy Leaf, they're less concerned that you're going to break their car than somebody who has a Tesla Cybertruck, right? So conversely, somebody who has a Tesla Cybertruck is willing to pay more, right? And I don't know the laws in each state, so my disclaimer here is make sure you're not breaking any local laws, local or federal laws, all right? But so if somebody's got a Chevy Leaf, oh, okay, I'm going to think one price. And let's talk about the pricing scheme first. So we carry around all this fake money because we call our unit the money maker, but it also comes in very handy in illustrating how this can all work. So we got a hook charge and a mileage fee, right? So with this business model, what we recommend is a plug charge, $100, and it's all dependent on where you are, right? If I'm in Alabama, rural Alabama, you know, it's $75 total. If I'm in New York City, it's $500, right? So just take my example here for an average, and then adjust it for where you are, or again, you adjust it for the type of car. All right. So if it's a Tesla. Okay, not a Cybertruck, it's a Tesla. Okay, well, let me tell you, John, for your Tesla, it's $100 for your plug charge, and it's $100 for your electricity charge. All right? And in 20 minutes, you should get 5 to 10 rescue miles. Okay? So now, and I had some people I had a guy in Miami, a tow guy, and he says to me, yeah, Ron, I'm doing that, but then they start pushing back on me and they say, wow, I can get a tow for $100. Well, it's hard to beat that. And then I say, well, are you worried about that tow guy dragging your Tesla with his tow truck without dollies? Does he know what he's doing? Do you want to get in the cab with that tow person? Or have you called around? A lot of tow people won't even touch EVs because they're so heavy and so delicate, and they don't want to deal with area dependent. So we say $200, and then maybe like if the EV